and you had the opportunity to write the comeback episode, what would you do?
I don't know. I'll tell you a story though. Brad Wright had written a script, apparently, that brought all three shows together. It was a movie. And it basically wrapped up in a nice bow for the fans, the culmination of SG-1, Atlantis in the Universe, and kind of brought them all together. And I never saw the script. I've only heard legend of it, whispered on the wind. But that, to me, would be the way to wrap up this franchise, is to bring all three shows together, because we're all dealing with the same central reality, which is the Stargate, and bring all those characters together. And then at the very end, I would stick a lemon in Rodney McKay's mouth. I would grab my fishing pole and hand Rodney a lemon. But I would love to have seen that script. That would be cool.
Hi. Given your experiences both in front of and behind the camera, what are your hopes and expectations for the future of women in science fiction?
With my experience in front of the camera, I think that since Stargate, and even prior to, obviously, there's been some amazing female characters in science fiction. In fact, I think science fiction did more for women roles than any other genre in terms of pushing forward a strong, capable, and yet feminine female lead. But certainly there's been more since Stargate, which I'm so proud to see. I mean, look at Rachel Nichols' character in Continuum, and she's awesome. But there's been hundreds. I mean, the fact that Battlestar Galactica had a female lead, which is awesome. So I think that my experience has been that it has gotten better and better in the 15 years since Stargate was first produced. Behind the camera, it's still an interesting struggle to get the powers that be to believe that a woman can direct a science fiction show. I've been very fortunate, and the people at Continuum were so welcoming and embracing, but that's not the general case. Most sci-fi shows are directed by men. In Stargate SG-1, there was one episode directed by a female, and that was the episode I directed, and that's in over 200 plus episodes. Continuum, I directed last year. There was a female director the first season, so it's getting better, but it's a struggle to get people to believe that you can shoot that kind of show. Primeval was great because they allowed me to do 3, but I think that there was some reticence from the part of the studios going, but she's a woman and there's dinosaurs. Yes, there are. But having said that, I directed 3. So I think it's getting better. My experience is that it's getting better, and the more we're allowed to do, the more we're able to prove that we're more than capable of doing it. Conversely, the interesting problem that I'm having as a director is more mainstream shows won't look at me because they think I'm too genre as a director. Oh, we don't like dinosaurs. It's like, just take the dinosaurs out of the equation and I can shoot your show. So I'm kind of getting streamlined into a sci-fi. It's interesting. And I don't think it has anything to do with the fact that I'm a woman. It's the genre. So you kind of battle that as well. But I definitely think it's getting better. I think the future is much brighter for women. Thank you.
What's the name of the Stargate episode you directed?
It's the one that Michael Shanks wrote, and it's called Resurrection. I was going to say that. I remember that one. Resurrection. Michael wrote it. I directed it. It was fun. He was like, Michael, I'm thinking of doing this with the scene. Yeah. Okay.
Hi. So I guess you didn't actually know until after the last episode of Sanctuary aired that it was canceled, right?
Yes, we did not know.
Okay. So the way it ended, and like the, I don't know, is there if I spoil?
I don't know, has everyone seen the ending of Sanctuary?
Yes.
If you haven't,
Anyway, with the destruction of Sanctuary, and then like I was totally not expecting that, because like the Sanctuary was a Sanctuary, and it took me a while to get used to that, especially then that it was canceled. Like, how did you feel about that?
well, it's interesting because when when we got the script, I was like, you can't, this is the Sanctuary. It's so much a part of the show, this look and this feel and this incredible cathedral that they've taken over, this home. It was really weird to think of it being destroyed. And then we started to get the previs on the new Sanctuary. I loved the fact that the last line in the episode is, "Shall we begin?" But when we were doing the color correcting and playback, which is where you lay down all the music and then you go back and you finally do a final sound mix on the show, Martin, Damien, and I were watching it, and when the Sanctuary blew up, I cried. And I looked over and Martin and Damien were like, yeah, golden, right? But we were all very emotional about it because it was such a huge part. It was another character in the show. But then at that point, too, we were very excited about what we could explore in this new Sanctuary. And we had talked a lot about, we did things like in the 12th and 13th episode of that season, we slowly started pulling things out of Helen's office, little keepsakes. So you'll notice that some things that were there at the beginning of the season aren't in her office anymore, and it's because she's sort of been stockpiling her favorite little things, but subtly, so that they could appear in the new Sanctuary. So we did little things like, it's like, oh, no, we have to have that, take that up. Oh, we have to have that. Okay, next episode, take that clock out, because we want that clock in the new Sanctuary. So we did little things like that, where we would pull set pieces out in the hopes of showing them in the new Sanctuary. Yeah. Thank you.
Amanda. What was it like shooting Grace, Chimera, and Death Knell simultaneously?
Did you hear that? What was it like shooting Grace, Death Knell, and Chimera simultaneously? I'm the type of person that thrives in chaos. I do. I know, they say if you want something done, give it to a busy person. It's totally true. But because they were also very different episodes, it was a bit of a whoa. But I kind of dug it. Like I do thrive in chaos. I do like a certain amount of mayhem in my world. It motivates me. So I just remember on Death Knell being totally exhausted, but also just like having a blast and running through the woods and thinking, I'm getting paid. I'm covered in dirt. I'm so happy.
And then there's David DeLuise.
Yeah. And then there's David DeLuise. Yeah, it was, it's emotional and it's exhausting, but it's when you're doing something that you love and you're being challenged so completely creatively, there's nothing better. There's nothing better than that. As an actor, as a person, to be that challenged and to feel so fulfilled, it's awesome. Yeah, no complaints.
Hi again, Amanda. Hi. My question is I'm really admiring and appreciating your abilities to observe and understand. I wonder if you could run on for us anything you've noticed about Don Davis. Talk about Don Davis for us.
Don Davis. He was an incredible man. He took us all under his wing. This man had been in the business for such a long time, and he was so funny and very professional. And he, if things weren't working out, he was the first person to get frustrated with himself. But he did it in such a funny way, and he had such a great sense of humor. So when Don kept missing a line, his head would get redder and redder and start shining, and the makeup would come in and pat it down with powder, and he'd be like, dang, I'm going to get this line, I'm going to get this line. And then he'd say it, and it would be wrong, and we'd all burst into peals of laughter, and his head would get red and red and red and red. But at the end of it all, he'd just turn and give you this little boy smile, I got it. It just, it's hard for me to talk about him without getting emotional. I was able to travel with him a lot. We were all able to travel together as a group to quite a few different countries. And Don is the most hilarious, uptight traveler ever. So we're in the Middle East coming home from this USO tour, and Don's bags get put on a conveyor belt in the middle of this open airport in the Middle East. And they go through the conveyor belt, and Don isn't allowed to go through it. And he freaked. He's like, you got my bags, those are my bags. We're like, Don, easy, man, we're in the Middle East, take it easy. And he's trying to go through, and there's guns everywhere. And we're like, Don, get back here. And he just, he was the kind of man who would get so worked up, And then afterwards he'd be all cute and sheepish about it. He had a lovely, lovely wife, Ruby. And I very much remember their wedding, and it was so great to see him so happy and so fulfilled. But he was a real father figure to all of us. He was a real father figure. And if there was ever any time where I was questioning what I was doing or I was nervous about something, even in my personal life, I could always go to Don. And his door was always open. I just love him.
Thank you, that was lovely. And pardon, in about 3 weeks I won't be seeing you, but happy birthday.
Thank you very much.
And I'm going to ask you a question, and feel free to refuse to answer it if you want
Whoa,
to.
this is going to get scary. I'm going to ask you a question. Feel free to refuse to answer
Just
it.
suddenly start talking about the weather or something. I'll understand. No, I just wondered, being the only girl in a family with 3 brothers, do you have any stories about what kind of got to you the most about growing up with 3 brothers?
It's sunny with a chance of clouds. I actually, I have 3 really incredible brothers. I don't know if I'm sure the story is out there. When I was born, my father wanted to call me Samantha. So my entire life, my dad called me Sam. I have a twin brother named Christopher. I have a brother named Richard. I have a brother named Stephen and a stepbrother named Michael. So I find myself on Stargate playing a character named Sam with Chris, Richard, and Michael. Yeah, right? So I think the fates intervened there. But my brothers, my eldest brother passed away in 2006, God rest his soul, but he was the oldest, and then there was my middle brother Richard and my twin brother Christopher. And I'll tell you what, they're great men, gracious, funny, really intelligent men. But as little boys, and being the only girl, I mean, I learned how to punch. They taught me how to punch, which was bad news for them. I learned how to throw football. I learned how to, sort of suck it up, buttercup, when things got really bad. But I always had the defense mechanism of being able to cry at the drop of a hat. So no matter what my brothers did, I could turn it on. I mean, that was the young actress in me, right? So it would be, my brothers would say something mean and I'd just be like, what have you boys been doing? Nothing, Dad, she's crying again. And then I got to be known as Waterworks. So then that trick stopped working after a while. But I think my brothers were also very protective of me. And I appreciate that so much now as a grown woman, how much they tried to defend me and protect me. And when I started dating the first boy who came to my house, it wasn't my dad that they had to worry about, it was my brothers. It would be like, I'd sit on the couch with my little boyfriend. My brothers would sit opposite going, so. My dad would be upstairs making tea for everyone, and we're making tea. I feel very blessed that I grew up with brothers. I always wanted a little sister, but 3 brothers was awesome. Yeah. We got into a lot of trouble, but we were good kids, I think. And they're good men. They're really good men.
As an Air Force veteran, I'd like to say that watching your portrayal made me want to put in for a tour with that outfit.
Wow.
It was very impressive.
Thank you. As an Air Force veteran, thank you very much for your service.
Now, the thing that just seized me when the show first started, I was a sucker for the stories. I'm a science fiction fan anyway. But when Colonel O'Neill comes back, and there you are explaining how you were trying to deal with the Stargate, and then, oh wow, this is what the cartouches mean. We've been trying to MacGyver that thing for years, and I hit the floor. And every year after that, it seems like somebody wrote some kind of Easter egg into a beginning episode of that season.
Yeah.
Whose idea was that?
Well, the MacGyver line was actually an ad-lib. The line was scripted as Jerry Rig. And on one take, I said MacGyver, just to see what Rick would do. And I got the typical Rick. Where then you wither. He had a great sense of humor about that, but I think there was a lot of ad-libbing. The little nuggets that are in there, a lot of those were ad-libs, but then our writers totally picked up the mantle and went, okay, let's plant this, let's plant that. But because everyone was, we're all pretty funny people and we're all pretty laid back about ourselves, it was, nobody minded being made fun of necessarily, so the writers ran with that. But Rick had a great sense of humor about MacGyver.
And looking at your portrayal, not everybody, I'm an actor also, and I'm just a little sensitive to the way the military gets portrayed. When someone gets something wrong, it bugs me. But you folks, I would have put in a dream sheet to join your outfit.
Thank you very much.
Hi, this may be kind of a hard question. There were so many episodes of Sanctuary that pushed the boundaries in so many different ways. The show very much did exactly what Helen said, pushing the boundaries of human experience. What episode are you proudest of? What would you say, this is my best work, this is the best one I've ever done?
For me, I think Tempest, which was the first episode of season 4. It's hard, there's so many, and it's still really so close to my heart that I haven't even been able to go back and look at them all. But Tempest was a challenge to play the two different versions of Helen. I think we pushed the boundaries in terms of the way we shot it, having the two Helens in the same scene. But for me as an actress, to play this older, hardened, more cynical version of Helen with a slightly deeper voice and a different carriage to herself, where she felt the weight of the world, compared to young Helen, who's in her 30s and is experiencing everything for the first time. Same with kernel of strength, but hasn't actually been fully realized yet. And I loved the duality of that. I loved playing this much softer, more tentative version of Helen, juxtaposed with Helen, you know? So for me, Tempest was sort of a quintessential episode as an actor. I think we did a lot of things. I think Monsoon, we talked about this yesterday. We didn't want to hang a lantern on a girl-on-girl kiss, but we also realized the importance of it to our fans and, the gay, lesbian, and transgender community, that it was, it's important to portray everyone, and it's important to honor everyone, and to do it without making it creepy or weird, or, just make it a very natural, beautiful thing. It's a kiss. Who cares, right? But the outcry from that was really interesting. Most people were very supportive of it, and we kind of knew we'd get some mail. Helen kissed a girl. But most of the mail we got was really very supportive, and that was really heartwarming. And then there was also people who thought that we did it as a publicity stunt. And I was very upset by that, because it really wasn't. It was just a beautiful, there's people crawling on the floor. But it was a very natural thing. So I think we pushed the envelope there a little bit without trying to, hang a lantern on it. I think there was so many I think the overall idea of Sanctuary was Sanctuary for all. I mean, we really stood by that motto, and we tried to do it in a lot of different ways. I mean, people who, that episode, Edward, we took things like autism or Asperger's or, whatever spectrum you want to fly it under, and said, it's not just the creatures that we need to be concerned about protecting. It's everyday people who may appear slightly different, and how much maligned we as a society, or how much maligning we are as a society to people with even a slight difference. I mean, we're sitting in a room full of primarily sci-fi geeks, and how much maligned have we all been, right? Where it's like, oh, you watch sci-fi in your parents' basement, in the dark, on the computer. No, we don't do that. Sometimes we do, but but it was just the idea of, and I'm not answering your question very well at all, but it was the idea of taking something that people perceive as abnormal and making it normal, and something people perceive as normal and saying, really, what is normal? How normal is it that you feel that way with so much hatred? That's not normal. Hatred isn't normal. So we tried to do that with the show, and I'm really proud of a lot of the episodes that we did that spoke to that.
And as a bisexual woman and a mother, I thank you for Helen Magnus from the bottom of my heart.
Thank you.
I want to thank you too, because as a member of the GLBT community, and I've worked with people with developmental differences for almost a decade, and saying it's a difference instead of like a handicap or a disability is a big deal, and like normalizing that, it's huge. So I want to thank you for bringing that to Main Street. I think it's extremely important.
Thank you.
My other question was, I was hoping you could tell us some about filming in the Arctic and what it was like with the guys in the ice and the submarine, and maybe a little bit about the movie you're doing for cannabis. I read a little bit about it, and I was wondering if you could tell us a little more about that. Okay.
So I'm going to speak to your first thing first, and just to get a little personal. But in terms of people being maligned and seen as very different, my eldest brother Stephen, who passed away, was epileptic and developed paranoid schizophrenia. And it's not something that people talk about because it's that big taboo, scary thing, and nobody wants to talk about people with disabilities or people with mental issues or people with mental health problems or mental health abilities, as the case may be. But my brother had the crap kicked out of him on a consistent basis because he was the kid who had seizures in school and had a lot of scar tissue from falling down and having seizures and bumping into things. And then developed schizophrenia. So we were the tap-in kids. We were the kids who got beaten up because our brother was weird. And I felt incredibly protective of him, as did my other brothers. And so and he ended up becoming a phenomenal man through all the trials and tribulations that he went through. He became an amazing volunteer in a very downtrodden community in Toronto, a member of his church with a very loud voice, and helped a lot of people come off the streets. He helped new immigrants. He worked in soup kitchens. He worked with the gay, lesbian, and transgender community. There were a lot of transgender prostitutes in the area that he lived in, and he opened his heart to them. So I'm so proud of my brother Stephen and what he in his short life accomplished. And Sanctuary to me spoke so, it was very important to me that we never, specifically addressed someone like my brother, but we tried to address difference and embracing difference, and that was in large part in my heart an homage to what a great man my brother was and how much he went through to become. But that's very personal, and I feel safe sharing it only because I think that there are people struggling in this world with mental health issues, and people are just pushing them away, and I just implore you to see somebody who looks different and hug them. What a difference it could make. So there's that. Thanks for listening. Truly. The Arctic. Now for something completely different. Sunny with a chance of clouds. The Arctic was phenomenal. It was something I was so stoked about going to the Arctic. Christopher wanted nothing to do with it because he's petrified of bears, so he was out. Michael wasn't sure he wanted to do it. Ben and I were like, send us to the Arctic. And it was from stem to gudgeon, just the most amazing experience. We flew little puddle jumper planes to Prudhoe Bay, Alaska, which is where the pipeline starts. And flew off in a Cessna 2 hours onto a moving ice floe where they had set up a camp, which was set up by the Applied Physics Laboratory Ice Station of Washington, University of Washington. And so we landed on the ice, flowing snow and ice and minus 48 degrees, living in these hooches, which were plywood, 8 by 8 by 20 plywood boxes with a propane heater inside and bunk beds. It was so phenomenal. The only bad part about the Arctic was the latrine situation, which was basically half an oil drum with a garbage bag and a toilet seat. And they were like, don't worry about the smell, it freezes. And you had to do this thing if you had to go to the washroom in the middle of the night where you took your flashlight and looked for eye shine for the polar bears. So you had to make sure there weren't any polar bears around before you left the, and you weren't allowed to leave the confines of the camp without the guy with the gun, trank gun. But everything about it was an adventure, everything. And we got to help out, like we were part of the kitchen duty, we were part of cleaning up afterwards, and I just embraced all of those things. We had to chip ice and melt it to make water. So there's parts in the ice where it comes up, it melts, it rises up again, it melts. This, and you can't hear what I'm saying. And it leaches the salt out of the ice. So they test all these different burns of ice to find ice that's suitable for drinking water. And then you take like a sled and you chop the ice, you load it onto the sled, and you take it back to your hooch, and you put it in a big pot on your propane heater, and that's how you get your drinking water. It's totally awesome! Don't even think about it, Kat. Then the Royal Navy was up there, and then the U.S. Navy. I think it was this competition because we had F-16s in one of the Stargate episodes, and in one of our, maybe even in Continuum we had F-16s as well, but so the Air Force was like, well, we're giving them F-16s, we're going to do this, and the Navy was like, oh yeah? We're going to fly a submarine up through the ice, in the middle of the Arctic Ocean, and we're going to let them film on it. And we're like, Army, what you got? But this, Captain Bernanke, I'll never forget him, was the captain of the submarine. And it was this crazy thing, because I was the only woman on the submarine. And so all the boys had to put all their magazines away. And you're on the ice, totally clear, there's no electricity, right? There's no microwaves, there's nothing. You're at the top of the world, you're not quite at the North Pole. But the clarity of thought in the air is so pure. And then you go into the submarine and it's got this totally different feel to the air. It's almost oily, like it's really thick, and they create their own oxygen, and it's totally safe. But we got a tour of this nuclear submarine, half of it. We could only tour half of it. The other half was off limits. But half of it, and we're walking through, and Captain Bernanke's like, and these, bam, bam, plops his hand down on these missiles and goes, Tomahawks. And I was like, but I got to sit at the captain's table, and I got to sit in the seat to the right of the captain. And that's where, if the president comes to visit, he sits. Right? I know, I was so and Richard Dean Anderson's like, I should get to sit there. And I'm like, because I am the only woman on this submarine. That's right. There's so many. We could talk an hour about the Arctic. It was phenomenal.